human beings are the only species on the planet that doesn't know why they're here. Like, we're born and we're basically useless, right? We're like, we're done, right? So the parents have to raise us the longest period of time that any animal on the planet has to be reared by its parent. And then when you're done, you come out, you go, okay, so now what do I do? And everybody looks at it and goes, I don't know. Let's figure this out. Or like, okay, we got to figure it out. Like, the birds just come out, they start flying around and they do bird things, and the trees grow and they just do tree things. But humans, we have no idea, like none. And so for me, I think that's the whole point. That's the whole point of life, is that you get to go explore. I say explore yourself. You then discover parts of, who you are, why you're here, and what you're here to do. And that's the adventure. So life's about exploration, discovery, and adventure. And so I think that is a max life, is once you realize that this is just a big playground for you to explore and to discover new things, then it becomes joyful and fun.
Oh, well, I love that. I love that. And it's so simple that it is like incredibly profound. I mean, because I hadn't really ever thought about it, like how you just articulated it, that we're born and we have like the longest launch period. And even then, I always think about with my daughter, who's going to turn 17 here soon, like we're talking about getting a job. And I remember like when I was going through the whole job interview process, they'd be like, well, why should I hire you? Pretty simple question. But honestly, it's really, really hard. Well, I really work well with people, convincing argument. I work well with others, convincing argument. No, like, why should I hire you? Which really drives to this underlying piece of like, who are you? I mean, that's really like the question we're asking, like, who are you? And what's crazy is that we're really quick to hop on online and tell other people who they are, right? But yet we don't have that same internal conversation. Erik, what do you think are the headwinds that keep people from having that honest conversation?
Conditioning. That's all it is that if you think about, humans are like computer programs. So you're basically conditioned, you're programmed. So we have programming that we're running on, and all of the insanity that happens in the world is a result of running on an old outdated program. See, we're all still working with our lizard brain program, thinking that the saber-toothed tiger is coming around the corner to kill us. But now instead, it's when someone posts something nasty on YouTube or on WhatsApp or whatever, TikTok, and says something nasty to us, all of a sudden we get this adrenaline rush because here comes the saber-toothed tiger. But there's no saber-toothed tiger. And then we lash out because we're trying to protect ourselves and basically not die. I mean, that's all human emotion comes right down to that. It's just propagating the species and managing that. But that's the problem, is that we're conditioned. And once you start seeing that we're all conditioned and programmed, all of a sudden you're like, oh, that's why I'm feeling that way. That's why I'm acting this way. That's why when someone said this one thing, it really upset me. So that's the true headwind, is the fact of recognizing that you are actually conditioned to act and behave the way you are based on not only your personal experience in your life since the day you were born up to now, but there's genetic memory, there's DNA memory. And a lot of the philosophies and the religions talk about karma and say, well, you're here to resolve that karma from a past life. Well, if you look at it like even like scientifically, my DNA is the same as my ancestors in Norway, the Vikings. Like, I have Viking blood in me. So when I get really pissed at something, it's because my DNA from the Viking days is still inside me. And I think that is the main problem that we have right now, is that we're running on old program. We're running off an old program, the software, and it's not necessary anymore. Like, it needs to be upgraded. So many of the spiritual teachers talking about, we need to enlighten, we need to raise consciousness and awareness. Well, it's all pointing to the same thing. And believe it or not, all religions and all philosophies point to the same thing as well. Like, they're all pointing at the same direction. But then everybody starts arguing over, well, no, it's called Bob, not Fred. Well, okay, fine. I don't care. Like, it doesn't matter. I only care about what actually is the fact of the matter. The truth is, we're all running on conditioned programming. that causes all the problems. And you and I know this super well. Like in Strategic Coach, it's the world's greatest philosophy program wrapped in a business blanket because it's a way of thinking. Because the minute you change the way you're thinking, you're reprogramming yourself. You're just reprogramming it because you realize that, well, the way I'm looking at it's not working. And why aren't things working right? Well, change the way you think about it. When you change the way you look at the world, the world that you look at changes. That's a Dr. Wayne Dyer quote. And that sounds really all woo-woo and spiritual and stuff, but it's actually real. Like it's a fact, right? So I think the true headwinds are the fact that we are conditioned and we don't know it. So it's the blind spot. So if anything, the Viking Academy, which I just launched, the whole idea was to like lift the veil and say, just go explore, go look. And so a lot of the podcasts and the conversations I have with people, it's like, I discover things about myself. I'm like, holy crap, I missed that. I didn't even see that coming because someone else shared it with me. And this is that beautiful thing about podcasts, which you already know because you're doing this. It's awesome, by the way. You all of a sudden, you learn a bunch of stuff for yourself. And so it's all a discovery of what's the programming that I've been running on that's not working for me anymore. What's somebody else using a different program and is it working for them? And it is a different way of thinking. And so when you think, it's the beginning of speech, which then speech turns into action, right? So those are the three. So the creation story, there was the idea, then the word, and then the action, right? So those are the three areas. So and I think of it as the mind, body, and spirit type of thing. But that's what I think our problem is. Like in a nutshell.
Well, I think that, I love everything you just said there, Erik. I'm really curious because if it's programming, right? And what you just were talking about is that there's reprogramming, obviously, or the attempt to recode or to reprogram or through thinking. And, just had guests on Joey Klein. He actually did it through the form of like breathing, right? And like in creating the connection. I'd like you to, because you've done a ton of deep dive. You've had the opportunity with your Viking Academy to get in front of some obvious reprogramming techniques and thinking and some non-obvious thinking and techniques. And obviously I'm curious to see if the obvious ones are the ones that most people have like, okay, maybe I've heard, but it's usually in the non-obvious ones where people start getting a little bit uncomfortable.
Yeah. So, it's interesting. And this is where I also think the adventure is. There's this beautiful quote that I put on my website from a spiritual teacher called Krishnamurti. Krishnamurti, if no one's actually listened to him, go listen to the guy. He's incredible. He's absolutely incredible. They thought he was going to be the new Messiah. And he came out and they're like, please give us the method, give us the methodology to save life. And you're going to be the one, you're the Messiah, the Messiah. And he finally looked at everybody and goes, there's no method, because the minute you follow the method, you're gone mechanical. The minute you go mechanical, you're no longer conscious of what's going on. So he said, there is no method. And they were all like, but you were supposed to give us the method to enlightenment. And like, he's like, no, there's no method. And so he said, one of his quotes that he said was, a mind that is constantly learning can never be hurt. Kind of parallels with a law of lifetime growth forever. Dan talks about being in a constant state of growth. Well, if a mind is constantly learning, it can never be hurt. So always being in a state of exploration and discovery and childlike wonderment. This is where all the saying stuff is, be childlike, not childish, right? So be childlike, like don't whine and, throw a temper tantrum in the corner. That's not what, the spiritual teachers have told throughout time. It's like, no, but be childlike, which means look upon the world with these amazing eyes and going, whoa, like this is incredible. And I think that is the beginning part. Like without that wonderment and childlike awe and exploration, and you can't move forward anyways. So then all the techniques and it doesn't matter. But the minute you stop and just look at something, like I'm sitting here looking out at the ocean, right? I'm on Vancouver Island here in the ocean. Just before I was trying to show you guys, I took my camera and spun it around so you can see the ocean. Where I see killer whales eating seals out there. It's crazy. I sit out and stare at the ocean and I'm like, oh my God. Like this is incredible. Like, life is incredible. As soon as I have that childlike wonderment, all of a sudden it becomes joyful. Like, life becomes joyful. And then it becomes just, now I get to explore and just find out new things. So not attaching yourself to any outcome is what say the Buddha talks about life as suffering, non-attachment. So it's not attaching yourself to anything is one of the absolute bedrocks, cornerstones of everything. Like, don't attach yourself to this meat sack that you're in your body, right? That's not who you are. There's an awareness, a consciousness that's beyond your body, like physiologically. And this is why I love the Viking Academy, because I explore those three areas. The body that I'm in right now is a different body than that I was in 7 years ago. Like, the body you're in right now it's not the same body as it was 20 years ago. Nope. Not even 7 to 10 years ago. It's totally regenerated itself. Sure looks the same, except mine looks a little bit older now, because every iteration it just starts putting more wrinkles on. What the hell is up with that noise? But it's the same. It's not the same body. So non-attachment, don't attach yourself to things, but be a childlike explorer of life. That is the I think the cornerstone. That's the bedrock of all discovery. Is like, don't take yourself so damn seriously. Be like a child and realize this is an amazing, wonderful world that is just infinite playground of exploration and discovery. And just go explore yourself.
Can you talk a little bit about your health journey that has really helped your aperture narrow in?
Yeah, well, absolutely. And so, up until the age of 40, I thought, boy, I'm a really healthy guy. I'm really good shape, all this other stuff and everything else. And about maybe 3 years before that, I pray, and I was praying to God to say, help me understand, our clients, our elderly clients who, have all sorts of maladies. And it was hard for me to relate to them. I wanted more empathy. I wanted to feel more of what they feel, so I could help address that when I'm coaching them, when I'm talking them through situations that are money related, but really are all about people and everything else. And all of a sudden, I go into AFib. It's now pretty common. People know about atrial fibrillation, but at the time, this is now 30 years ago, then I went to AFib. It was not very well understood or well known. And I was saying earlier to you, in the green room, is that basically I've now been in the hospital 51 times. And that all started back then with what they call cardioinversions, where they come in and zap you, and then ablation procedures, where I had 5 of those. And this happened between 1997 and 2012, most of that part of it. But about a year into having these issues with atrial fibrillation, I was sitting at my desk one day and I kind of pounded my forehead and I said, you prayed for this. This is how your prayers are answered. But it was at that point, I think I was on most people's same journey in health, like, oh, geez, how do I deal with this? And, the normal thing, let's not make it work. But then I realized, this is a gift. Because what's happened here is I've been given this gift of focusing now on what's important every single day, because I don't know how long I'm going to live. And I could do everything I can about it. And by the way, I have 2 other heart diseases. I have apical hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, which is a long way of saying a thickening of the heart, which is actually worse than the AFib from a mortality standpoint, and a flutter, which is another part. So I kind of got a 3B on the whole heart thing going. And because of all the stuff I've been through, there's been other issues and so forth. But what I realized was, okay, I'm going to take this and I'm going to take a very positive route. And so, for an example, what I do when I have been in the hospital, different procedures, is everybody comes in the room, I ask about their life, how they're doing today, find out more about them. And invariably, they'll say, how do you do that? How are you doing this right now? Because you're in pain and this is going on. I said, well, and the ones who are really fascinated with it, I tell them, I said, because we're talking about MaxLife. I go, well, I have this one life to live and this is what I've been given. So I determined that the way to do this was to really focus on every day to bring value to people where I could do this, whatever they are, so that you walk in the room and you're a nurse and your life is whatever, and you probably got bad stuff going on, and I'm going to make your day good and find out more about who you are and help you on your way if I can. And if I can't, we'll just have a nice, pleasant conversation and we'll go along. And I said, what that does for me is it makes me totally forget about these maladies I have and really pay attention to you and the doctor, anesthesiologist, and the guy who pushes me around the cart, and all these different folks. And I'm just having a community of people around me that I'm enjoying right now, because this is where God has placed me right now in this hospital, in this situation, and so forth. I go, I think anybody can do this, but I don't think it occurs to most people to do that. I think what occurs to them is, woe is me. I've got this terrible maladies, and so my life is horrible. But my life has gotten better and better because of that. And I think, like I said, I believe it's a gift, and it's made me really focus on, this is the pulling thing I was talking about. It's really pulls me towards this future that I live right now. So I'm really grateful that this happened to me 30 years ago, because I think I'd be totally different if it didn't.
Yeah, Gary, I'm really curious, your West Point background, right? Like there's a problem, then you strategize, right? And like, how do we conquer that hill? Like, how do we get around that? And I think that what you have gone through, I think, is amazing. And having personally experienced it, I think it, by the way, if you've ever been around Gary and you heard that he has all of these maladies, you would never believe it, because when you look at him, he is like, it looks like he just came from West Point, right? Everything is like, squared away. He looks like he still does PT every single morning, which,
by the way, I do.
Which he does. But what are 3 things that you think that people could use and anchor back to whenever they start feeling that woe is me, that sort of what I call it, the slippery slope into that chronic unhappiness?
That's a really good question. I remember I learned that. I was a plebe at West Point. I was writing a paper. It was like 2:00 in the morning. I was dead tired, just going, oh, this is awful. And then I thought, well, I'm completing my paper. But I bet you there's another plebe out there who's a heck of a lot worse than me right now. He's further behind. His paper is much, it's not anywhere near as good as mine. He's probably going to fail it. And it kind of occurred to me, there's always someone out there who's in worse shape than you. And there's always someone out there who's in better shape than you. And if you don't get that lesson clear up front, you're going to go in the wrong direction. And so I've always looked at it like, yeah, I've been in the hospital 51 times and I've had all this heart disease, but I got to tell you, I've run into many, many people with the conditions I have, and they're much worse off. And I'm so grateful that I'm not as worse off as they are. And I mean physically, I'm not saying mentally. You can always find someone that's in worse shape than you. And, there's a little phrase I use all the time, because I think sometimes life is, situational, is, but for the grace of God, there go I. I mean, don't think just because you've got money and health and all these things you have that all of a sudden that won't happen. Enough of that's happened to me in my life. I realize, the grace of God is there and it's placed on me at certain points in time. And I take advantage of that. I'm grateful for it and so forth, but there's always someone worse off than me. And I have to remember that and get some humility and saying, you don't need to be whining about this. There's somebody much worse off than you. So quit your whining and moaning.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, so that's obviously one. It's the you're living someone else's dream, even though you're living maybe not your most ideal like life at that point, right? You're always living someone else's dream. What else would you say allows you to kind of refocus back in?
Yeah. So, to your point, I think some of the fundamentals, and I've done this with my team, and certain clients will want to know about this. Well, how do you keep doing what you're doing? I said, well, it's really about 6 things. Now we're getting into the regimentation part of it or whatever. I said, I've got this huge window. You want to have sunlight, and you need sunlight. You need clean air. That's why we live out here where the air is clean. You need clean water. We've done lots of things to make sure our water is very clean. You need to have at least It depends on the person. Me, it's 7 hours of sleep every night. You need to exercise at a continuous basis, 6 out of 7 days. That's probably the thing I've done more than most people. I'm on starting my 55th year of running. I've been running for 55 years. I'm very fortunate not to have injuries that would sideline me. But, and this morning, you're going to laugh, but I was out on the road doing push-ups and sit-ups and on my run. And I do that every single day, except for 1 day a week, with all the heart conditions I have. And most people look at like, how could they? Well, I go a lot slower, number one, but to me, that's a setup every day for getting through a really good day, because your mind is sharp, you're fully rested, you're putting good food in your body. That's the sixth one. You're putting the right things in your body. You're having the right atmosphere around you, the right environment. All those things go together. It sets you up for having every day be a good day. And I think people forget about those fundamentals. Those are fundamental things.
I love that you laid out these 6 fundamental things of living the good life, right? Not even the max life, just like the good life. Because I think that you're totally right that people want to, like, it's the next thing, right? When I get this promotion, when I get XYZ, then I'll be happy. But I can't remember the exact quote, but I think it's James Clear that says, like, you don't rise to the goals, you fall to your systems and structures. It's so interesting that I think one of the big myths about what winning is and what it looks like is that it's complicated. I think the biggest myth is that that being successful and winning at life is difficult, because what you just articulated, sunshine, like clean air, clean water, like call it clean food, movement, right? And what was the 6th one? Sleep. Like, that is pretty simple.
How do we hear one another? How do we give people the space to be who they truly and freely are? These are the kind of conversations that are not happening. My book, the title is No Honesty, K-N-O-W, No Honesty. So that's a 4th category being added to that. The side that I mentioned in the book that is probably the most important thing, and really, if your listeners were to take away one thing today, one thing, it's to be open. You will totally change your life. You will increase your happiness. I mean, it's a better world if we can start pushing upon everyone this idea of openness. And here's what I mean by that. That's listening without reservation. It's putting your needs and wants on pause for somebody else. So now when entrepreneurs work together and team members work together, instead of just vying for and pushing me, myself, and I, they're actually taking the time to listen without reservation, to really hear what their team members have to say. Now, that does not mean they have to agree. They're just really listening to what that other person has to say. And when you shut off your mind, you shut off your preferences, and you're totally present to that human being, you get them so much more. Your ability to connect goes through the roof. And so what we're trying to push for is these 2 sides of communication. If all my leadership team members that I work with can be 100% honest and 100% open in their communication, my gosh, we're unstoppable. That's what we're going for. And that's what's not being delivered in these session rooms and when we work together.
What are the headwinds to leaders, teammates? I'm going to even bring this into like social media spaces, friends, family, marriages. What is the headwind? What is keeping that at bay? I mean, you think of it like in terms of like you have salt water and you have fresh water, right? And it's like we're in this brackish water when we talk about openness and honesty. What are the headwinds that keep people from wanting to engage that?
I really think the biggest word I can come up with is just lazy. It's just laziness. You know, to really develop, like, Ben, I'm looking at you, right? We're eyeball to eyeball on this podcast. And I'm thinking, to make a real connection with you, like, I got to have the stamina, the energy, the willpower, the want, the desire to connect to another human being. You have to want that. But here are the options we have in life. We can choose not to connect. The easier path is, not pour into Ben. Not be well rested and have enough energy to talk through some things that are pretty serious. To go on social media, quickly blast an opinion out there, but not have the energy or the stamina to stay in the conversation and work through whatever conflict there is. It's just so easy to go do that. And then turn off your social media so you don't have to deal with it. So you can go fry somebody however you want to and then back off it. It's so easy for if my wife and I are having a problem at home to be like, you know what, I don't want to talk about it. And I go upstairs and I just get on my phone and I engage with anything other than probably the most important thing in my life. And so it's just distraction and disconnectedness is so easy, and we choose it always. And that's why it's really hard. You're watching these books like Jonathan Haidt's book, if you've heard of it, Anxious Generation. Oh my gosh, is that some of the most brilliant work done in the last decade in terms of what is going on with us? And it came out right at the time that my book was launching. And I'm like, this stuff is so good. This is the kind of stuff our world needs. Now, you can embrace laziness. You can have the ease, but along with that, you will have loneliness, depression, anxiety. I mean, we are designed to be social creatures, but we're also in many ways gravitating towards the low-hanging fruit and the ease of disconnectedness.
Yeah. Where do you think the tipping point was where we became lonely? I mean, I just context to that, Ken, is in preparation for today, I knew that we're going to talk probably about some communication, which in my opinion is the umami that happens, right? It's the difference between great outcomes, lazy outcomes, bad outcomes, sort of unknown outcomes. It is amongst everything that we do. And it's often verbal, nonverbal. I mean, there's communication that happens just at a cellular like microbiome that like surrounds us, right? And if you want to talk about energy field, like communication is nonstop happening. But then I've thought about it verbally. If you go back to reading some of like Shakespeare language, it's beautiful and it is just, it's flowing. It's a craft. There's artistry amongst how to like say something super simple to like my daughter's generation, which is filled with, I mean, I have to have like a decoder ring to understand what like these 4-letter things like LMK. And I mean, I can't even remember all of these things where we've kind of dumbed it down into, 4-word or 4-letter phrases. And where do you think the tipping point was when you look back historically, where maybe the beginning of this slide into either the anxious generation or the not open, not honest society began?
Yeah, I mean, we've always struggled with it. I mean, I assume insecurities existed from the beginning of our time. And so I think there are 1,000 different reasons one would not be honest and one would not be open. And we just don't have the time to collect all those. But a great talking point nonetheless. But the tipping point for me, or at least where it's accelerated and it's gotten out of control, really is in the beginning of 2012 when social media became this platform, and you can tag the cell phone along in there too. So if you think about where we've gone with electronic devices and where we've gone with social media. So we went from communicating face to face, Ben, you and I, to a room, to communicating to a screen like we are now, to cell phone taking over our life, where it's in our pockets and it's in our hand. And I'm losing eye contact with people in my life, to it's on people's wrists now to communicate. It's getting slowly closer into our bodies. There's only a matter of time before contraptions are in our body to communicate. And I think that, it's just kind of a crazy thought, but I think the cell phone, I don't know what year that came out. That's not the 2012 point. But when the cell phone came out, I think it did a lot of good in terms of now you can connect with anybody at nearly any time. What did we lose? We lost a little bit of eye contact, maybe a little bit less of a reason to be in the room with one another. Then you put in 2012, and then you add a social aspect to it. Facebook, what else was out there that was hot at the time? MySpace, yeah. Bring that back though. It had some more fun to it. But but then our way to fulfill our social cups was this inauthentic approach to communication, and then it's not going anywhere. But now, how many platforms have this where you can connect to masses, but you're not necessarily deep diving. You're not engaging in rich, meaningful conversations. I mean, you're at the shallow level of communication, dive in, dive out. And so the richness of relationships are going to the wayside. And so I think, it starts with the cell phone. It's enhanced through social media. And here we are today, not reversing much of that at all. Tickets are down for going to the theater. Attendance for church is down overall. Us congregating as a community. I mean, look at it. I mean, it's sad. Less in office stuff. Let's work from home, be on computers all day. And so we have to do something to reverse this. And I do believe the pendulum will swing. So I'm not trying to give you a doomsday type scenario here. I'm just saying it's way over here, and people are experiencing anxiousness, anxiety, loneliness at some of the highest levels we've ever seen. And it'll come back because people won't want to tolerate that. I just don't know how. And I hope that our small work can help accelerate that.
Thank you for listening. A big thanks to Elation Lab for the production and creative design. Remember to like, subscribe, and follow us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Keep listening for more Max Life.